So, I want you to imagine sitting in your car. You're just firmly planted in the driver's seat.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. And you want to drive clear across the city. So, you put your hands on the steering wheel, you check your mirrors, but you absolutely refuse to turn the key.
Wait, why wouldn't I turn the key?
Well, because you tell yourself that you are going to wait right there in the driveway until every single traffic light in the entire city turns green at the exact same time. And only then will you actually start driving.
I mean, that is a scenario that guarantees you will never, ever leave your
The
drive
Kipfley
pad.
forever parked.
Yeah.
And yet, this is exactly what we do with our biggest goals. We just sit there and wait for perfect conditions. So today, we are tearing down the illusion of the perfect start.
We really are.
Yeah, welcome to this deep dive into a really fascinating collection of notes and practical psychology, all centered around one incredibly powerful concept, which is the courage to start badly.
And, we should probably establish right away that this specific deep dive is crafted specially for you, the English learner listening right now.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we recognize that taking on a new language, or really daring to start any new creative project, usually triggers this massive, overwhelming wall of hesitation.
Oh, yeah. And because of that, we are deliberately keeping our pace comfortable today. The vocabulary will be clear, but, we are absolutely not watering down the underlying psychology.
Right, no watering down. We are going to examine the hidden mechanisms your brain uses to keep you frozen in place.
And more importantly, we are going to hand you the exact tools you need to outsmart those alarms. The ultimate goal is to get you to stop hesitating and start practicing, creating, or working on whatever project you've been delaying.
So to understand how to break that freeze, we really have to understand what causes it. And our source material provides this brilliant, highly relatable, real-world example of this exact hesitation.
Oh, the audio channel story.
Yes, exactly. It details the journey of someone trying to start an audio channel. Like the ambition was there, the ideas were totally there, but the actual launch was delayed by 6 agonizing months.
Let's actually look at the anatomy of that delay because, well, the hurdles are almost universally shared. During the first month, this creator didn't record a single word.
Not one.
Right. Instead, they spent 30 solid days doing nothing but researching microphones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they had dozens of browser tabs open, comparing frequencies, reading reviews, essentially just paralyzing themselves with choices.
And then, of course, came the language barrier. They began obsessing over their own voice and their pronunciation.
The self-doubt loop, right.
Exactly. The internal narrative became this loop, just convincing themselves that their accent was too heavy or, their vocabulary was too limited to ever hit the record button.
And hovering over all of this was the phantom audience.
Right, the imaginary critics.
Yes, the absolute terror that they would put this audio out into the world and it would be met with total silence, or perhaps even more terrifying, that people would listen and leave brutal negative reviews.
It's just so paralyzing.
It really is. That overwhelming desire to guarantee that everything would be flawless on the very first try caused a total system shutdown.
And what's fascinating here is that the sources identify this specific condition as perfectionism paralysis.
Perfectionism paralysis.
Right. It is a fascinating psychological phenomenon because it feels like a character flaw, like, laziness or a lack of discipline. But it is actually a deeply ingrained defense mechanism. Your brain is actively trying to protect you.
Okay, wait, let's unpack this. How is keeping me frozen for 6 months helpful? If I want to learn English to get a better job, but I refuse to speak it because my brain is protecting me. I mean, that feels a lot more like sabotage than defense.
I completely agree. It feels like sabotage in the modern world. But we have to remember how our brains evolved. For thousands of years, social rejection or public embarrassment could literally mean being cast out of the tribe.
Which basically meant death back then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It meant death. So our brains developed an incredibly sensitive alarm system, the amygdala, that treats social risks the same way it treats physical threats.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so when you think about speaking a new language to a native speaker or publishing a potentially bad audio recording, your amygdala senses a threat to your social standing. It floods your system with anxiety to literally stop you from taking that risk.
Wow, so it is hitting the emergency brake to keep you safe in the cave.
Precisely.
And because we are intelligent creatures, we don't just say, I'm terrified of being mocked. We dress that fear up in very sophisticated clothing. The notes actually call this the civilized escape.
The civilized escape. It's the polite, responsible-sounding excuse we hand ourselves to justify our procrastination. It is the creator saying, I'm not procrastinating. I am just conducting essential market research on audio equipment.
Yes. Or, going back to my analogy, I'm just waiting for all the traffic lights to turn green. I mean, it is a brilliant disguise for fear. But we really have to rip the mask off here. There is no magical day in the future where you will wake up feeling perfectly ready.
No, you're simply trapped.
Right. And actually, let's pause here for our English learners. There are two key sentences from the sources that perfectly describe this feeling. The first one is, I'm trapped in perfectionism.
I'm trapped in perfectionism. That is such a crucial concept for you to hold on to.
Right.
It perfectly encapsulates that feeling of being locked in a mental cage where you demand the absence of any flaws.
Which makes movement impossible.
Exactly.
And the lock on that cage is the second phrase we want to highlight. I'm afraid of looking foolish. Nobody wants to look silly or incompetent.
Right. Nobody enjoys that.
But if our brains are biologically hardwired to view a messy, foolish start as a literal threat to our survival, how on earth do we convince ourselves to open the textbook or turn on the microphone? Like, how do we fight millions of years of evolution?
Well, the short answer is we cannot fight the biology. But we can actively change the framework, the lens through which we view our beginnings. We have to redefine the concept of a messy start entirely.
Okay, so how do we do that?
The sources introduce this really transformative pivot in mindset.
Yeah.
The core idea is this: a messy start is better than a perfect stop.
A messy start is better than a perfect stop. Let's just sit with that for a second. Being in forward motion, even if you are, stumbling and tripping over your own feet, holds vastly more value than standing perfectly still with excellent posture.
Oh, absolutely. And that is because life, and certainly the acquisition of any new language or skill, is not a live, flawless television broadcast. It is an iteration.
An iteration.
Right. It is a continuous cycle of producing something, looking at the result, making a small adjustment, and then trying again.
The notes present a really stark contrast between two opposing mindsets here, and breaking them down helps expose why the perfectionist approach is such a dead end.
Yeah. Let's look at the perfectionist dead-end mindset first.
In that mindset, you operate under the delusion that your very first attempt must amaze everyone or it's a total failure.
And in that mindset, every single mistake is weaponized against your identity. If you mispronounce a word in English, it isn't just an error in sound. It becomes like absolute proof of your inherent incompetence.
Which is so damaging. You start to believe you are simply bad at languages rather than someone who just needs more practice.
Right. And what does that lead to? It leads to looking outward. The perfectionist spends their time staring at people who've been speaking the language or, making art for 5 years, and they internalize that gap in skill as a personal deficiency.
But the alternative framework is what the sources call the messy start freedom. Here, you accept that the first attempt is supposed to be bad.
Exactly. The poor quality isn't an accident. It is the entire point. A messy start is merely a test of your systems and habits.
You are just checking to see if you can sit in the chair for 10 minutes. You are just verifying that the microphone actually records sound. You remove the pressure of quality entirely.
And instead of viewing mistakes as indictments of your character, you view them as the necessary tuition you have to pay for learning.
The tuition metaphor is incredibly apt. You cannot acquire a university degree without paying the financial cost.
Right.
Similarly, you cannot acquire a complex new skill without paying the cost of awkwardness, confusion, and error. That discomfort is the currency of growth.
It really is. And in the messy start freedom mindset, your vision narrows. You stop looking at the experts and focus entirely on your own footsteps. You're just aiming to beat the version of yourself that existed yesterday.
Okay, let's unpack this. I am going to push back on this a little.
Sure, go ahead.
Because it sounds wonderfully poetic, right? But the reality of living in the modern world complicates this enormously. It is very easy for us to sit behind these microphones and say, just focus on your own footsteps and ignore everyone else.
Yeah, I see where you're going.
Right. Because when you open your phone, you are instantly bombarded with flawless, fluent English speakers, beautifully edited videos, massive success stories. How is a learner supposed to genuinely ignore that pressure and embrace their messy start when perfection is shoved in their face all day long?
It is a profound challenge. I completely agree. But the key is recognizing the structural illusion of the digital world.
Yeah.
When you feel that despair looking at someone else's content online, you are falling victim to a massive category error.
A category error.
You are unfairly comparing your chaotic behind-the-scenes reality
Yeah.
to someone else's heavily curated highlight reel.
Oh, Okay. Or, to use a different analogy, it is like you have just decided to run your very first marathon. You are sitting on your front porch, fumbling with the laces on your new running shoes, and you look up to see someone sprinting across the 26-mile finish line covered in glory, holding a trophy.
Exactly.
And you compare your starting line to their finish line and conclude that you must be a terrible runner.
That's exactly it. You are entirely ignoring the hundreds of hours of blisters, cramps, and terrible runs that person endured to get to that finish line. You are ignoring their learning curve.
The learning curve.
Yes, the learning curve is that unavoidable, often clumsy period of time required to internalize a new skill. You cannot skip it. Wealth cannot buy your way out of it. Everyone must travel it.
So the goal is to consciously embrace the learning curve. And that's actually our next key phrase for our listeners. Embrace the learning curve.
Yes, embrace the learning curve.
Yeah.
You have to hold that clumsy stage closely and accept it as the natural order of things, rather than fighting it.
You really have to internalize the creator's mantra that, and here's our next phrase, done is better than perfect.
Done is better than perfect.
An imperfect, messy sentence spoken out loud gives you material to actually improve. A grammatically perfect sentence that remains locked in your head forever helps absolutely no one.
Finding the inspiration to embrace that iteration is vital, but, philosophy only gets us so far. We have to translate this into physical action.
Right, the practical steps. What exactly should you, the listener, do tonight when you are sitting alone at your desk, staring at your English textbook or a blank computer screen, and that wave of paralysis hits?
We need to bypass the amygdala's alarm system. And the sources provide a brilliant, highly tactical 3-step method for doing just that. They refer to it as the cool down and breakthrough method.
Okay, let's break this down. Step 1.
The very first step requires a radical adjustment of your expectations. Step 1 is, you must lower the bar to the ground.
Okay, wait. Lowering the bar. If my ultimate goal is fluency, or, launching a successful project, how does aggressively lowering my standards actually help me achieve excellence?
It sounds backwards, right?
Yeah. If I tell myself, I only need to study for 1 minute, that feels like a complete waste of time. I am not going to learn a language in 60 seconds.
Well, you won't learn the language in 60 seconds,
Right.
But you will overcome the physics of starting, which is actually the hardest part of the entire process. Think about activation energy in chemistry.
Okay, activation energy.
The amount of energy required to initiate a reaction is massively higher than the energy required to sustain it. When you set a goal to, say, memorize 50 vocabulary words today, your brain perceives a massive mountain.
And the friction is incredibly high.
Exactly. The friction is so high that the amygdala triggers that civilized escape, and you end up watching videos instead.
But if I change the goal to, I just need to open the English book and look at one single word, the mountain becomes a pebble.
Exactly. The friction drops to near zero. Your brain looks at the task and determines it is too small to be a threat. So you slip right past your own psychological defenses.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And the secret is, once you expend that initial activation energy to open the book, the physics of momentum take over. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. You will often find yourself reading for 20 minutes simply because you are already there.
Because the hardest part is over.
Right. But even if you stop after 1 minute, you still win. You built a habit of starting.
You remove the dread from the equation entirely. So, okay, you have tricked your brain into taking that tiny first step. Step 2 of the breakthrough method addresses the fear of judgment. Step 2 is hide the audience.
Hide the audience. This is about intentionally constructing a sandbox.
A sandbox, like what kids play in.
Exactly. A sandbox is a contained, low-stakes environment. Children use them to build elaborate sandcastles, smash them down, and build them again. There are no permanent consequences, no rules, and no critics evaluating the architecture of the sand.
We need to build a psychological sandbox for our goals. So if you want to practice speaking English or write an essay or record your voice, you make an ironclad agreement with yourself that this specific attempt will never, under any circumstances, be public. It is entirely hidden.
By removing the audience, you instantly neutralize the threat of social rejection. You grant yourself a permission slip to be unapologetically bad.
A permission slip. I love that term.
Just like a permission slip from a teacher grants a student the authority to go on a field trip, you are handing yourself the official, indisputable authority to make a massive mess today without any guilt.
You become entirely unapologetic about your lack of skill in that moment. You do not apologize for stumbling over verbs or recording distorted audio. You own the mess because it is confined to the sandbox. I really love the idea of physically writing, "I have a permission slip to make a mess" on a sticky note and putting it right on your computer monitor.
It makes the abstract concept tangible. So now, assuming you have lowered the bar to reduce friction and you've hidden the audience to remove fear, you actually take the action. You stumble through your 1 minute of practice. Which brings us to the critical third step.
And this is where most people derail the entire process, right?
Yes. Step 3 is celebrate the mess.
Celebrate the mess, which I have to say is deeply counterintuitive. When you finish a clumsy, agonizing first attempt, maybe you tried to record an English introduction and it took 15 takes and still sounds robotic, every instinct you have will demand that you instantly critique the performance.
Oh, your brain desperately wants to perform an autopsy on the failure. It wants to highlight every mispronounced syllable and awkward pause. But you have to aggressively interrupt that process. You cannot evaluate the quality of a messy start.
Instead, you have to literally shift the criteria for success. The question you ask yourself is no longer, was the result any good? The new, singular question is, did I have the courage to start?
And if the answer is yes, you celebrate. You audibly acknowledge the victory, because by pushing through the paralysis and generating that terrible, messy first draft, you have crossed a massive milestone.
A milestone is a significant marker of progress, and producing garbage is a far greater milestone than producing nothing at all.
It is the milestone that proves you are no longer sitting in the parked car waiting for the green lights. You have finally turned the key and put the vehicle in drive. You are on the road.
As we bring this deep dive to a close, we want to anchor these concepts with a practical, healing affirmation pulled directly from the core of our sources. Wherever you are right now listening to this, whether you are commuting, walking, or just sitting on your desk, we invite you to take a slow, deliberate breath.
Drop your shoulders. Release the tension in your jaw. And if you're at a place where you can, repeat this specific phrase to yourself. I give myself permission to make mistakes. My messy start is the exact beginning of my growth.
Let that sink in. I give myself permission to make mistakes. My messy start is the exact beginning of my growth.
It is vital to remember that every single master, every eloquent, fluent speaker, every brilliant creator you currently admire, well, they were once a terrified beginner who simply dared to be terrible at first.
They all sounded foolish at the beginning. They all recorded bad audio. They all had messy starts. And now you hold the permission slip to go create your own mess today. Do not wait for tomorrow morning. Do not wait until you can afford the professional microphone or until you have memorized the entire grammar workbook.
And, if we pull back and look at the broader implications of all this, it raises a deeply compelling question for you to consider as you move forward.
Yes, we want to leave you with one final lingering thought to explore on your own. Think about the intense friction of your messy start, the acute frustration, the stumbling, the sheer willpower required to push through the awkwardness of not being good at something yet. If your current messy struggle is actually building a very specific type of mental resilience, like a robust toughness that a magical perfect start could never possibly forge, what hidden superpower are you secretly developing right now simply by daring to be bad at it?
It reframes the entire struggle. The difficulty isn't a barrier to your growth. The difficulty is the very mechanism building the strength you will rely on later.
So stop waiting for the impossible alignment of all those green lights. They are never going to sync up for you. Put the car in drive, press the gas pedal, and fully embrace the messy, chaotic, beautiful journey of starting badly.